Yes, good morning everybody. Today is Monday, the 18th of March 2004. It's 9 a.m. This is a meeting of South Norfolk's Cabinet held at the conference centre in Norwich, our offices. On the top table with me are my Cabinet colleagues. We're shortly to be joined by Keith Kiddy, who's probably just getting a coffee somewhere. He'll be with us in a moment, so we're fully attended today. In terms of items of urgent business, I think it would be a shame, it would be wrong if we didn't recognise the passing of our dear friend Stephen Ridley, who has served as a member of this council for 5, possibly 6 years, 5 years. He sadly passed away, not last week, the weekend just gone, but the week before. And if we can just have a few moments, not a minute, but a few moments just to remember his wit and wisdom and the way in which a very distinctive person who'd light up a room and brought humour as well as rigour to the running of the council. Just a few moments silence, if we may, please, to remember his service. Thank you, yes. Presumably members will be informed of funeral arrangements and other...
Yeah, as and when they become clear, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay, minutes of the last meeting. This was the big financial meeting pre-budget, so we looked at the Revenue Council tax, strategic plan, of course, which hangs off the budget, pre-application planning fees. There was an opportunity to buy some further properties. Jamie, there's also there's another opportunity being afforded to us, which we will consider in due course, won't we?
Yes, Chair, we're still exploring with government who've given us more money than we asked for under the Local Authority Housing Fund, which is a positive, and we're just working through the details of how best to deploy that.
Yeah, free money is always popular, but when you've got to match it more than pound for pound, we've got to just balance that with our, what else you might have to give up there. So on urgent items, or sort of Chairman's welcome. Ben, you've joined us today as our new head of development management. So welcome to you. Come from the private sector, so that's good. So sadly, whilst we've lost Helen after 40 years public service, she's retired. Ben, you're taking over, and very warm welcome to you. Because as was the first item on the agenda, will be of particular interest as we get a local plan and, importantly, a 5-year land supply. Okay, so those minutes, are we happy with those? Okay, we'll move on. In that case, let's get straight into business. Agenda item number 5. It's on page 16 of the printed papers. This is the adoption of the Greater Norwich Local Plan. Now, we're sitting here today as Cabinet. This is a decision for full council, so the debate, if we need to have it, will be happening next Monday at a meeting of full council. But I think here's the opportunity just to flesh out some of the fine grain in advance of that set piece event. I think next Monday will be an important moment. Oh, Lisa, you and I and others have slaved. We've got Mike Burrell here as well. Since 2015. This is the third local plan I've been involved with. And the last one was a slog. And they said, don't worry, when we started this in 2015, don't worry, it'll be much quicker this time. Well, guess what? It wasn't. I think, so that is 9 years. 8.5 for sure, nearly 9 years. I mean, honestly, how can it be so damn difficult to do it? But anyway, we were lucky in the sense that we were able to carry forward about 37,000 houses from the existing local plan. So I'd characterise this as a top-up, with topping up what was already in the plan and expected and long-term consented with another sort of 9,000 or so homes to take us to 2038. Of course, we're all around there with Yarmouth, with Norwich and Broadland, and of course working with the County Council as well with an integrated plan with infrastructure through the Greater Norwich Growth Board. So that's all pretty good. We've been through we've been through this so many times, but I think there are some points that are really worth bringing out here. It isn't just about the homes, although they carry the greatest attention. It's also about employment, land, jobs, protecting natural assets, and I'm particularly pleased at the strategic gaps between Norwich and Heatherset, and in turn between Heatherset and Wymondham have been protected, as well as the Southern Bypass Protection Zone. There's no challenge over that, and the important sight lines, not just from the bypass, but also as you emerge from that cutting on the train, the vista and the setting of Norwich to the south is protected. So it's about green spaces too. And of course the integration with the growth board means that the investments in schools can be made, and surgeries, and we'll probably talk about later on this meeting. So that's good. And I think the record on providing new schools dramatically extended in Cossey at the high school, new schools in Cringleford and in South Wymondham coming on stream. So for those people that say, well, where's the infrastructure? Actually, the infrastructure is there, and we've been able to borrow up front to do that. That's a conversation I was just having with the DLAB ministers on Thursday about that. Big things, the 5-year land supply. And so, Ben, you stepped into a job where the hand-to-hand fighting with developers on speculative developments should be a thing of the past, well, at least for the next 5 years, because we seal in a 5-year land supply. That's the biggest innovation I think we've had, because even though we've had a plan with 30-odd thousand houses in the mix, there's always been some cock and bull reason why developers would try their hand to try and get under the wire or loopholes or this and that on 5-year land supply. That door is now closed. That's really good. The Cossey contingency site's gone. We've got clarity over Gypsy and Travellers sites, which is really good. Although it's not strictly speaking within South Norfolk, the Anglia Square and East Norwich developments are secured in the plan. So that means that's baked in and can't be chipped away or somehow undermined to give us additional pressures. And of course the nutrient neutrality progress we've made, which is leading in the country, has there. So I think we've got certainty and no more cat and mouse with developers, and that in turn should give people who reside in South Norfolk a really good opportunity. There's some other foxes that are being shot as well. So for example, just in the fine grain of the detail, in Dis, for example, around the Frontier site there. Yeah, Frontier is still using it, but it's accepted that during the plan period that's going to come forward. There's some people who've been stirring on that. Well, we've drawn a line under that one. So a lot of clarity here. So when I asked at the opening, well, how come it's taken 8 or 9 years? Well, you can sort of start to see some of the detail. Mike, you've led us through for that whole period, having served in an apprenticeship under Sandra Eastor in the plan before. Did you want to add anything else and possibly take us through some of the modifications and then the process working with our colleagues in Norwich and Broadland to formal adoption? To you.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of, I think the most important of the recommendations, just prior to the recommendations, on page 29 of the papers, we've received a highly positive inspector's report endorsing the strategy. So the inspector's report is in Appendix A, and that sets out the changes that are required in order to adopt the plan, the main modifications to the plan. Now these aren't extensive. One of the ones the chair referred to was the removal of the Cossey contingency site. But this is the standard approach for plan making. The inspectors, when we submitted the plan, we request that the inspectors recommend the changes that needed to be made to make the plan sound. The inspectors have done so through their report. As I said, they're not extensive changes that are required. These need to be included in a plan for the plan to be adopted. Now, there are significant benefits to adopting the plan. These are set out in the conclusion between pages 27 and 28. The first major benefit of adopting the plan is that it will allow us to progress our evidence-based policies, which have been developed in partnership, which we've invested considerable time, as the chair has said, and money in. It's been a long process, but national data shows that the 7 years taken, I think I've taken a slightly different start date firing gun. I've taken the time when we actually issued the call for sites, but 7.5 years. But Lord Fuller was talking about, I think, when we had the initial meetings, and before that starting gun was fired, we had considerable amount of time where we had meetings to establish how we would approach this. So this is actually about the average amount of time at the moment for doing local plans, for making local plans. And I think you'll all be glad to hear that there is work ongoing nationally that should speed up local plan making. I don't think any of us want to think that it is necessary to take that amount of time. This is a great success. Joint working is difficult, and we've been able to really effectively progress this plan. Only one other partnership, Central Lincolnshire, has adopted a review of a local plan. And the final thing I just wanted to point to was, as the chairs referred to earlier, getting a 5-year land supply is absolutely critical. So for planning applications submitted from 2020, from the end of last year onwards, we have a planning 5-year land supply that is fixed in for another 5 years. So in terms of your recommendation today and council next week, I firmly recommend that that Cabinet should recommend to council that the plan should be adopted.
Lisa, you and I have sort of tread the boards together for that entire period. I mean, from your perspective, what have you learned?
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I'm really pleased actually to see this report before us today, because as we've heard, it has been worked on for a considerable number of years. Lots of say ups and downs, but that's with collaborative working. We managed to get the agreement for all 3 councils. But as has already been touched on, you know, the plan which has been developed will provide housing sites, commercial land, which will provide new jobs, and it's all in a sustainable manner, considering there's policies in there considering sort of climate change and protecting and enhancing our environmental assets too. And I'm really pleased, because I've always said this, working closely with our DMC, and it's so to me the most important thing that will come from everybody signing this is that we will have a 5-year land supply for the next 5 years, which is really important, I believe, to protect our district. Because we do otherwise get speculative developments which come along. They're not sites that are in the local plan, and if you don't have a 5-year land supply, it's more difficult to control these when dealing with these applications and making decisions. South Norfolk also decided to do a village clusters plan, which is just behind this, but it won't be too far, and then once that is adopted, it will become part of this plan. So South Norfolk went a slightly different way, and we wanted to have very small developments in our rural parishes to try and give those villages and parishes a bit more life, if you like to say. So that'll come before us. As Mike has said, the inspector's report shows a few modifications, but nothing too major. And so it now needs to move to the next stage, which, as it is here today at Cabinet, will have three councils, Broadland, Norwich City and South Norfolk will have to go to their Cabinet meetings, followed by their council meetings. So today we're being asked to recommend to council the three things you'll see in the recommendations, and I fully endorse that, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any other points anybody else wants to make? Yeah, Mike, please come back and then we'll.
Could I just
I'll wind up.
confirm that Norwich City Council have actually adopted the plan? They did so a few days ago. So South Norfolk and Broadland now considering it. South Norfolk 25th, I believe, your council meeting, 28th for Broadland. So the adoption statement for Norwich is already published, and people who have commented on the plan have been informed. The adoption statements for Broadland and South Norfolk will be sent out simultaneously, assuming adoption happens, on the 2nd of April.
Good. Okay. So look, it's a very important moment, and this isn't just about where we are today, but it's also set a seed. And I think one thing it is worth emphasising is that whilst we've got 38,000 homes for the whole of the three planning districts in the stocks today, we've got to recognise that some of the infrastructure is now full at the point at which these are completed. And I do sense that as we now embark on our next local plan, serious consideration is going to have to be given to a new, properly planned new settlement somewhere within the greater Norwich area that can grow over time. And I think so, and that is explicitly included as a directional travel in this plan. I think for the 2 or 3 local plans I've been involved with, for entirely proper reasons and being pragmatic, what I would call onion skinning onto existing settlements has been the way forward. But that moment has come to a culmination, and it'll be the work of this and our neighbouring councils to imagine how we can take forward a new properly planned settlement for the next one. And the other point as well is that the village clusters is coming forward with about 2% of the total number of houses in the village clusters. It's not a huge amount, servicing about 30% of the South Norfolk's population. So it's by no means disproportionate. And that will be delivered alongside the Long Stratton bypass, which again, why has that taken 20 years to get to this particular point? These plans are so ponderous and they take forever. But if you didn't have the plan, it would be chaos, build absolutely everything next to everybody, and no planned infrastructure. And I think, Mike, you're right, that the 4 authorities, and I include the county with the 3 other planning authorities, have worked together, blind to the administrative boundaries and actually blind to the politics, which is really unusual, to get to this point. And I'm proud to have been associated with this. I think we have genuinely shaped our area for the better. The sky hasn't fallen in. When we started in 73, this authority 50 years ago, there were about 75,000 residents in South Norfolk. There are now closer to 155, so the population's doubled, but quality of life has been maintained and sustained, and I know I would say that. Even the Sunday Times says that Wymondham is one of the best places to live in the country, so there's some external validation from that. Okay, so let's turn to the recommendations. They're printed on page 16. Let's to note the inspector's report. I think we've been through all of that and seen the main modifications as they reflect across the whole plan, but also to individual sites. We can then adopt the consequential modifications, documents J2.1 and 2.11, and delegate to the Assistant Director for Planning, new boy, he's here today for the first time, to publish the adoption statement and the accompanying documents, making the GMB part of the adopted plan for South Norfolk. No pressure there, Ben. Good. So, are we happy with those? Brilliant. Thank you for that. So you'll be here again on Monday when we take this through full council, but I think that's been a good summary. Okay, let's move, now if we may, on to page 111 of the printed papers, agenda item number 6. This is the Taysborough neighbourhood plan. Now, we looked at this at the tail end of last year on the 9th of October. It subsequently went to a consultation between October and November, and there were 29 responses. And we're now in a situation whereby the plan is coming forward. So well done to the people in Taysborough. We don't have anyone here from Taysborough to talk? No? Okay. So what I like about this particular plan, though, which is unlike some of the other neighbourhood plans we've had, and then I'm going to have to turn to the page where it is now, there's a list on page... it's here somewhere, I've circled it. There's a list of the things that the people the residents of Taysborough want to achieve. It's a list of projects they want to deliver. It'll be it. I'll find it in a moment. And I think I would encourage all places having a neighbourhood plan to do that. Otherwise, it's just a plan for plan making's sake. This is a plan that actually is trying to achieve something. There we are, page 143. To repair the village hall play areas, the cycle paths, the links to the Boudica Way, linking with other footpaths and other allotment provision, and a long-term plan for burial spaces. So actually, this is a plan with a purpose, and I think we can welcome that. There have been some changes. Richard, you sort of help the parish go through this. Did you want to identify or highlight some of the key issues?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so as you'll see from the appendix 2 to the report, we've just set out the examiner's recommendations as they relate to the comments that South Norfolk made in particular at the last round of consultation. I suppose two of the key changes which we were pleased to see, which they related to, first of all, the design policy within the plan, and the fact that the key site that's been identified as part of the proposed village clusters plan for Taysborough was identified as being in a zone of transition identified by the design guide, whereas officers in the planning policy team, the place shaping team, considered that taking the overall settlement character into account, it would have been better placed within the upper Taysborough character area, so that the examiner has agreed with that, and that change has been made. And again, another policy in the neighbourhood plan which does relate to, in particular, to that site within the village clusters plan, in the emerging village clusters plan, where they're seeking to influence that, which is a constructive policy in general, but officers had concerns with some of the more detailed criteria as part of that policy, in particular seeking for one of the vehicle entrances to the site, or proposed vehicle entrance to the site, being simply for pedestrian and cycle only. So those key changes have been made. There's a couple of others which we sought, which have been made as well. Overall, having discussions with the parish council following the examiner's report, I think they're satisfied with the changes that have been made by the examiner and happy for it to proceed to referendum.
Okay, so I mean, what are the next steps, Richard, if we accept the recommendations that have been made today?
Yes, so following a decision today, we will be looking to publish the decision statement and also publish referendum information, because it's effectively a positive decision today will approve it to go to referendum with those changes. We've already had discussions with the elections team, and we do have deadlines we need to meet, but we could get this ready for a referendum in parallel with the Police and Crime Commissioner elections on the 2nd of May.
So actually it's really important we make a positive decision today to enable that to happen at really zero extra marginal cost to the exchequer. So that's really good. Are there any points? No? Well, I think, and in the absence of anyone here from Taysborough, let's just send our warm congratulations. These documents don't just happen by themselves. I think they've demonstrated they've consulted wisely. These are very sensible and well-considered proposals. There might be some disappointment from some of the committee, I suppose, with the mild dilution of some of the musts into shoulds and sort of the detuning down there. But let those small points not detract from a big achievement for Taysborough. And I'm certainly happy with the results that have come back. It's been well considered, and it's been a well-polished piece of work. Again, a piece of work with a purpose, which I'd encourage those other participants to do as well. Okay, Does anybody else wanted to say anything? No? Well, in that case, well done to Taysborough. We approved the modifications, I think we can say, yes, and published the decision statement, and with an eye to having the referendum in Taysborough on the 2nd of May. Perfect. Good. Counted on the 3rd, I think, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Counted on the 3rd. There we are. Good. Okay, thank you for that, Richard. Right, who have we got now? So, Darren, Rodney, you going forward? No? And Debbie as well. So we're now on page 166 of the printed papers. This is the Strategic Performance, Risk and Finance Report for quarter 3. So this is for the 9 months all the way to the 31st of December. So, my goodness. I mean, the budget monitoring is really important. I think there are 2 big numbers here. One of them is that there's an update to the situation which we had at our annual budget meeting last month, which was informed by the period of the first 6 months. We're now being able to advance that on to 9 months. And so it does look as if there's additional financial headroom baked in for this current financial year. Of course, it's not finished yet. We'll only know when it's really done at the end of quarter 4. But it does look on the page of 169, there's an additional £770,000 worth of resources available to us that was not in our best estimate as recently as a month ago at our full council budget meeting. And I think that enables us, when we come to meet next Monday, on the basis that the Wymondham Town Council has now agreed to our proposals to co-invest in public realm improvements. We've got some headroom that can support that decision without impacting on existing budgets. So I think that's really good news. I see Terry Laidlaw. Terry, you're here, and I'm sure you'll want to draw attention to page 168, paragraph 3.3 on the capital schemes. Remembering this is only to the end of December, but we're making good material progress on the capital programme. And again, finally, for this part of the agenda item, I see that, and Jamie's just taken his seat, so we'll ask him in a moment. There's an additional £95,000 request slipped in to invest in the vehicle inspection facilities at Ketteringham Depot. This is unheralded, so perhaps we might just have a little explanation of that first, and then we'll go, and Darren, you can take us through. So, where's this 95 grand come from? Who's going to do it? Simon's going to do it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the £95,000 request relates to the need to invest in additional equipment, effectively a pit, to allow us to carry out inspections on the vehicle. Recently, we had an MOT failure because we couldn't actually inspect the vehicles sufficiently with the equipment we've got. So it's a request to install a pit and the necessary equipment. The first question you'll ask is that a waste of money, in the sense that we're looking to obviously relocate the depot. Half of that cost of the equipment we will be able to take with us. Unfortunately, we can't take the pit, but we can obviously take half of the equipment that will fund with us to a new depot if and when that comes into fruition. Thank you.
Well, can we just be really clear, because there might be public listening in, we're not planning to relocate the depot, just refurbish and reinvest and bring it up to date. So I think the thought that we might have wasted that, I think, is a false thing. So, okay, Darren, so the first 9 months, it looks like we are continuing to run a surplus, and there's some environments later on in the appendix. Did you just want to tell us how confident you are with this, and possibly give a year-end forecast?
Thank you, Chair. So the overall cost of services showing a deficit of 239,000. We are confident that at the end of the year position is going to be close to that level. There'll obviously be a few additional changes once we have the full year end position, and as you say, that cost of service pressure is put into focus by the fact that we'll have a surplus at the end of the year by the amount of interest that we are gaining on our fixed term investments. It's significant that the interest that we're gaining is around the 5.5% to 6% mark. So we are definitely producing more interest returns than we would have anticipated.
Thank you. So I suppose in essence, to translate what you just said there, Darren, is that although we're going to run a budget surplus this year, it's not through lack of not spending. In fact, to a certain extent, we're overspent. And why should that surprise us? We're having to deal with increasing homelessness provision and all sorts of other cost pressures. Those pressures are being met in full, but we've got an excess of income, more than planned. And I suppose, I don't think that's a criticism. You plan for the worst, but hope for the best. And we've got this excess of income which is given to that. So no suggestion of cuts or not doing enough. In fact, as we will see later on this item, we've never done more to support families in need, address homelessness and all those other things that the state is there for. So you're pretty confident that so by the time we get to the year end, because this is the first 9 months, we're nearly there at 12. Do you think that's more or less as is, or could there be a further betterment, bearing in mind that interest received is running ahead of where we planned it to be?
I think there could be a slight increase on the amount of interest that we receive there. We've had some surplus funds that we've invested in money markets. So I think by the end of the year we may see a slight improvement on that position. It really does depend on the outturn for the capital position as well, because obviously we've got excess funds if we don't fully spend on some of the capital projects by the end of the year.
There are some big ticket items, for example, there's £5 million going out for the bypass in the next few weeks, for instance. So although there's been a somewhat hiatus there, looking forward, we've got the LMA Barnes building now let. So in due course, after the, I'm sure there's a rent-free period that normally is, we're going to start to get some income in for that as well. Okay. So, Richard, where are you? There you are. Did you want to add anything else or on the fine grain of the numbers?
I think you've probably covered, well, Darren, between you, you've covered the points. It's probably worth just drawing attention to the fact that there's some, tucked away in here, there's some good news that we should be celebrating, particularly, I mean, I think the standout item here is the leisure services. They were looking at...
So it's page 174 of the printed papers.
But even on one, yeah, looking at a much improved position, perhaps a couple of £100,000 less, which I think is worth giving them some congratulations, and also is obviously helping with our overall position. The other point I suppose I would just like to make, because you did mention the capital programme, clearly there is a big number in this year's capital programme which we're not going to achieve, but when you divide that out between those items or those projects that are provisional and confirmed, and then you add into that the fact that Big Sky have not called upon the loans that we'd made provision for the reasons we've discussed previously, and I think there's another, it's worth mentioning, Berwick Road is also in there, and there's not been a requirement for that. It goes some way, I only say some way, to addressing the point why we haven't fully spent, or don't look like we're going to fully spend on that capital programme in this particular year. But other than that, Chairman, I think probably we've covered it.
Well, thank you. So, Darren, consider yourself excused. I think it's really good, but the hard work continues. Let's make sure we sustain this all the way to year end. Good. Let's move on, if we may, within this agenda item to the performance dashboard. I know oftentimes we focus on the reds, and sometimes I think to myself, we've made a rod for our own back, because we set our targets so high, and the stretch targets, when we don't hit those stretch targets, we mark ourselves down, and there might be an example of that. So perhaps spend a moment talking about the things that we need to continue to focus on, and then I think there's some very good news stories in amongst the greens where we're really making some good progress. So, Debbie, you're standing in for Corinne, I think, today, leading us through this. Shall we start off with sort of a red indicator, which is on housing and homelessness prevention work. Jamie, you might want to chip in as well, which on the face of it is red, but I can't quite understand that because we've never been doing as much.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is one of the 3 red ones that we have got, and that's because we've continued to see pressure relating to homelessness, but it is slowing down. It's less than we had the previous quarter in Q2. This Q3 though does cover the Christmas period. We had a homeless trend does tend to always slow a little over that period, but our prevention work really does continue. But demand is increasing and it's significantly higher than the previous year. And that's due to the well-known economic factors, with people trying hard to secure private rent and household affordability issues still remaining. But we have invested significantly and continue to invest in some additional temporary accommodation units, which we hope will take the pressure off of that budget going forward. I don't know if Jamie would like to add any more.
You know, when are the extra 26 units coming on stream in Dis, for example? Do we know?
There'll be late spring, May. Thank you. I was going for seasonal. Mike's helped me with the month. Thank you. I would only add, Chair, to Debbie's commentary that we're investing heavily in both ends of the process, if you like. So not only are we investing to deal with better quality products and a more cost-efficient product when people do fall into crisis via temporary accommodation, the reciprocal statistic in our pack, which is green, is the amount of people that we prevent from being homeless in the first place. And it's up and above the 85% level, which is sector leading when you look at where other local authorities' performance are.
Yeah, and let's not also lose sight of the fact that whilst the Household Support Fund, government central funding, is falling away during the year, on a cross-party basis, we agreed to put an additional, I think £350,000 into helping families in need with discretionary funding. So I think, although this is a red, we've marked ourselves down, having set ourselves a very high bar, we're not just sitting there throwing our hands in the air thinking, oh God, this is terrible, woe is me. We're investing heavily in alternative accommodation, additional financial support for families in need. And I think, Mike, if I was to say we were helping 100 families a week, different families, would that be about the mark?
That would be Chairman, and it's a range of help. And the one thing that we've done as a council is we've taken the barriers away from requesting that help. So we don't have thresholds, we don't have different ways of accessing. Just come in, ask for support, and we will channel you into the right way. And that's really important for families who are struggling. That's
right. Putting all the money into one heap, giving officers the ability and flexibility and discretion to apply it at best, rather than trying to shoehorn people into individual schemes, is a better way. So let's just put some numbers on that. 100 families a week helped is 1 every 20 minutes during the office hours. That's that just shows how we're really trying to grip this one. I apologise for delving into this, but it's a matter of public interest, and this is a very high profile thing. And in Dis, where you represent, Graham, the Clare House is nearly done, isn't it?
Yes, nearly complete. I'm holding Mike's feet to the fire on that one to make sure that it does get done. But it's also important to note with the funding that the staff have now got and the officers have got the discretion that if somebody turns up here on a Friday afternoon, they can make a decision to give them funding there and then, rather than wait and say no, we can't process this, it holds time over the weekend, etc., and make them come back on Monday morning. It's 2 days to wait, it's too long. So they've got the discretion there to be able to make sure that folk are looked after rather than just left to their own devices on a difficult case. So really good news there. So
it's a red, but I think we're gripping it, is how I'd suggest to that one. External funding to support growth. I know we're working some on there, Pride and Place, but there's some deferous things that are coming forward, which again, I'm not quite sure this is the complete picture, and possibly it's because we haven't drawn down the numbers yet as opposed to Q3. But
Yes, Chair. Actually, that will go into the green because we've recently got some funding that's been secured for a lot of the councils in Norfolk, for some of the Norfolk environmental credits work. So there is some external funding still to come in the last quarter.
Okay, so that's a timing issue. Emma, staff retention. Again, this is one where we've set ourselves quite a high bar, but we've given ourselves red. The direction of travel is better. Did you just want to comment on that?
Yeah, happy to, Chair. So staff retention, you're right, we have set quite a high target for that. This has been 10% since the inception of the One Team in 2020. I think looking at the current markets and the way the markets are, that's probably very ambitious to get to 10%. Looking at the end of year will be more towards 14%, but we are seeing the quarter turnover reduce down, the trajectory of that turnover go down. But what we're getting is much richer data as well from exit interviews, so we're understanding better why people are leaving. And they're largely quite positive reasons. There are still issues, but they're largely positive reasons. And a lot of that is career progression. Whilst we're a big organisation, we're still a small one at a senior level. So it's that rewarding factor of seeing people go on to higher level jobs. But I'm confident that we have got a good handle on the turnover.
Does this include people who work in the depot as well as in the office, for example, and our leisure centres? Okay, so that might be an partial explanation too, not least because this leisure centre, which probably isn't completely included in these figures at this point, but it will wash through next quarter, is closed for a period of substantial refurbishment. So,
but just on this, we've relocated those staff. Is my understanding they haven't left us, so they have been relocated, and we have got much more granular detail at service level areas that assistant directors work their way through, so we can see if there's any patterns.
Thank you. Council tax and collection, Richard. We put a new system in, haven't we?
Sorry, yes, Chairman, we do have the new system in both of those measures, so that was expected to be one of the reasons why this measure particularly might not be fully on target, but I think the trends also demonstrate that we have also seen some difficulties over the last few years in this particular measure, which may go beyond the obvious one around the new collection, the new system, I should say, and perhaps some of the cost of living issues are playing through into this as well. But overall, as you can see, the target is very high, and we are on target or nearly on target to meet that by the end of the year.
That's good. Retail space in market towns. Well, I know from Halston in particular, the Barclays Bank closed, and I think number of financial institutions are pulling out. That's probably an explanation there. But also, I'm really pleased, as we've prefaced earlier on, and Lisa, I think you're going to chair this committee in due course, is we've got the £1 million investment in Wyndham to extend the trading day, co-investing with the town council and other partners to really make a solid investment there. So I think, again, rather than just sit there and think, oh, never mind, how bad is this? Definite positive actions and resources are flowing to some of these issues. Dan, you keep an eye on all these ones. Which of the green ones do we just want to celebrate for the moment?
It's my habit as a natural pessimist to go straight for the reds. And I was reading ahead. So, do you know what, Chair? As it's your penultimate one, why don't you pick one out while I have a hunt?
Well, I mean, so we've got Ben today, Ben Burgess, who's joining as a head of planning and development management. Now, we've got a 100% record on planning decisions made within statutory timetables. I mean, that's a really good thing. That's unusual. Now, I'm not going to say, and I'm sure he would say in due course, our planning team isn't fully staffed. But as I look around the rest of the country, now we've got a really good planning team that is working to target and is doing the best they can in difficult circumstances against the difficulty of trying to get other statutory consultees, not least Natural England, brought to heel so we can get some of these decisions taken out. Recycling, it's still green, but I think that's a timing issue. Although notionally it appears to have just dropped by 1% and a bit, we're going to see that pick up now the grass is growing. So the green, the brown bin service will kick in there. You've already mentioned, Richard, the important stuff on the leisure centres. And Kim, perhaps, did you want to comment about the way in which we're now well over 1 million visitors a year to our leisure centres?
Yes, that's another figure that's quite good. The number of members across the 4 leisure centres is sort of over 400 more than target, which is great. But the team are still doing quite a lot to increase what's on offer for the members as well. So we've recently added a lot of spaces into the classes, added new classes. We've got ballroom dancing at Cats Park tomorrow with some spaces available. So lots going on in leisure, which is to be celebrated.
I think the other one is, and it relates to time at the depot, my dear friend David Renard, late lead leader at Swindon, lost his seat last May. I was bumping into him the other day. I'm talking about missed bins. We've got 18 missed bins per 100,000. In Swindon, there are 1 million missed bins since last May. I mean, that's just an astonishing number. And so, the fact that we've, all the way through the autumn, whatever, that number is consistently low. And many people, they think all they get is the bins, but we've got a really good service there. And of course, the number of people in our brown bin service has never been higher. So, there's some good stuff there. So I think I've probably given you, Dan, a little bit of time to think of some others now.
Thank you, Chair. No, I did have a good look, and I've decided that the one I'd like to highlight today is our affordable home delivery.
Well done.
Which, if you have a look, you'll see has picked up significantly back from Q1. Yeah, I'm sorry, Graham. He's not going to ask you today, so it's going to be fine. But you'll see we've effectively doubled the quarter-on-quarter delivery now. So another real example of us providing real places for actual local people to live in.
Good, well done. Okay, so, I mean, there's a lot to be celebrated there, but I think the important message is those where we've fallen just short of the stretch targets we've set ourselves, actively being managed, resources being put in, and a plan for each of them. So I think we're on top of it there. Good. Debbie, the strategic risk dashboard. I'm now drifting on to page 182, 183. Is there anything we need to be concerned about on strategic risks?
Well, we've reduced 2 this quarter, which is SNC M11, which is around ambitions and delivery plan do not match the capacity of the organisation. Obviously, in February, we passed both our budget and our delivery plan was approved at council. So we think that's reduced the risk. Equally, we've got a project management office approach now that continues to strengthen its approach. So that's why we've reduced that score there. And the second one is SNCP3, which implications around the Government's Resources and Waste Strategy and Environment Act 2021. Government have recently published their response to the consistency and collections consultation. So that's confirmed a little bit more what's going to happen in the future there, and that local authorities can continue to charge for garden waste collections. So that one's gone down slightly. The highest scoring risk is SNC M12, which is our cyber security. That remains our highest scoring risk and represents really the ever threatening sort of threat we hold around a cyber attack there. But we have, however, had our cyber assessment framework, which we've just received back. We've gone as a pilot authority working with the government to undertake that assessment there, and we will be starting to work up an action plan to continue to strengthen our approach ever more really around cyber security.
Good. I mean, I attended, along with you, Dan, the District Council's Network meeting in St Albans last week. There was a presentation from the Chief Executive of Gloucester. They had a cyber attack, and it affected, not only did they lose a lot of the day-to-day stuff about benefit processing and planning, and I mean, that was just a disaster. It also affected the land charges system, and the effect was that nobody could move house in Gloucester for 6 months because they couldn't get their searches done. This is the consequence of state actors infecting the there. So I totally endorse the decision or the assessment that ICT security is a critical risk where we can't afford to penny pinch. Last week, Leicester City Council, an enormous council, was also similarly afflicted. It's too early to see what the consequences there are, but it's really important that we don't let down our guard on that. And that goes down as far as the problem in Gloucester was that somebody pretended to be a developer and was engaging with the planning officer, and it was made up. They were intending to put in a planning application, don't you understand? And then that person then sent, I'm sending you an email now with the pre-application details. So in other words, it wasn't just some sort of unexpected email, don't click on that. Somebody had taken a moment or some time to create a social connection with a staff member, and that email contained the payload. And that's infected all their systems. So I just do think it's worth, on that narrow point, socialising more. It isn't just the Nigerian scams that you sometimes get and the Russian stuff. This is, there's a degree of sophistication here. And I'm not just getting at the planners. I mean, there are other areas where it was an expected email that contained the payload, and that's worth communicating to members as well. So yeah, sorry to labour that point, but it's from others' disasters that we can learn there. So I think that has got us to the end of this particular item. So to draw the strands together, we're going to go to page 166. Oh, sorry, Terry, please come in. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just if I can ask this question, at the bottom of page 168, and we're talking about investment income coming from Big Sky, and I'm noting it's nothing year to date after 3 quarters, and then an expected 1.2 million in quarter 4. First question is that related? Is that phasing related to plan? In other words, do we collect the investment income once? And the second element of that is, given that there is no investment income that's come from them in the first 3 quarters, and we're nearly, I suppose, three weeks away from the end of the year, how good is the 1.2 million coming in?
But isn't that the answer? That the money we haven't lent to Big Sky is lent to someone else. So, and that's why, in the actual to date, the one at the bottom of page 168 is 2580. In other words, out of one pocket into the other. So, but it is.
I'm not sorry.
Yeah.
We still have on page 1, and I'm pleased to see these numbers reported. On page 172, we still have working capital to Big Sky Developments of 17 million as of 31st December. So that would naturally be subject to interest being paid on that.
Well, I'm going to pass over to the managing director, and then Darren, perhaps you can slip in if he misses anything. So,
yeah, no, I'm sure your initial premise was absolutely right in terms of the interest payable is accounted for on an annual basis, which is why the figures read as they are. And again, your second premise of there is cash still deployed, there is absolutely cash still deployed, resulting that return. What Big Sky have not done over the period is taken out additional anticipated loans. Darren, if I've missed anything there, please do jump in.
No, you've covered everything there, thank you.
I mean, there's been a hiatus on nutrient neutrality, and that's meant the anticipated drawdowns haven't happened. But that's not to say that as soon as we get this one sorted out, Phil, where are we with the nutrient neutrality and the sale of credits through NEC? Has it unlocked the blockage?
Yes, it started to unlock the blockage, and we'll see an increase in development taking place, certainly in the Yare catchment, which is predominantly within South Norfolk, and we'll continue to see that increase as we go through the year.
Okay, so yeah, does that help you, Terry?
Well, I only raised the subject because it is a significant number when we're looking at the bottom line. If that interest didn't come forward in quarter 4, I mean, you refer to the trading difficulties, which we all understand. If that interest didn't come forward, then we wouldn't be transferring money to general reserves. We'd be taking money out of general reserves. So that hence it's important. The other element, if I may say, the other element is that we are referring to this slower development generally related to Big Sky, to what extent these adjustments to their strategic plan coming forward soon, and do they have an effect on next year? That's not a subject on this agenda, but it's a subject of interest.
As shareholders representative, I challenge the directors, to A, live within the means, we set them a credit limit, but B, to accurately, profile this. Again, it's not for this meeting, it would be below the line in any event. But I think one thing we can say is that your wider point illustrates that when we think in terms of the council's aggregate finance, Big Sky must be an integral part of the group treasury operation and not somehow sort of parked over there in a black box, because the two are, and we've seen at the bottom of page 166, how interrelated they are. And when we get through onto the next item, you'll see how important that principle of having group treasury is within the group of companies, which includes the council itself. So that your point is well made and accepted. Good, right, okay, so I'm going to now turn to page 166. The recommendations, there are 4 of them, to endorse the revenue capital position, which, as we say, is to the first 9 months, the 31st of December. Performance of quarter 3, so we've got some reds, but quite a lot of greens there. There's some good stuff. We're dealing with the reds. Risks, I think we've re-emphasised the cyber one. And Simon, you are asking, you've just slipped in another 95 there, but hey, we can afford it. So that's good. Happy with that? Good. Thank you. Right, we're now going to go into the group asset management framework. I did ask my colleagues earlier, well, hang on, have we done one of these before? It turns out, well, yes, we have. It was in 2017. To me, it just seems like yesterday. But with another 7 years gone by, I suppose it's time for a refresh. Richard, are you going to lead us through this one?
I'm going to say a few words, Chairman, but I think Debbie will may wish to elaborate. But certainly you'll see from the report that the asset management framework, commercial property asset management strategy, falls into three parts, three elements: the asset management policy, and the strategy, and then of course the action plan. And why is this important? Because we have assets that value £48 million, so it's not an insignificant sum, and that indeed has grown significantly since the last time that we considered this in 2017. And these, of course, apply across the whole range of our assets, our operational assets, which has included additional temporary COSI, and also the commercial property assets. And we know that there are new commercial units through the Big Sky developments at Portland and at Long Stratton. And of course, as has been mentioned earlier, the investment that we made at the Norwich Research Park with the LMA Barnes building. So why are we doing it? Because because we have to do it, and it's associated appendices. It goes into great detail about the way that we will need to conduct ourselves to stay within the requirements and guidance that are set out by SIPFA and by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. I think with that, I'd probably be best to hand over to Debbie to put some detail on it.
Before you do, I think this is the big change to this versus the 2017 is I think the 2017 one really just treated assets as financial as investment assets. Quite rightly, quite hard-nosed, but only really hard-nosed. I think we'll recognise in this update that in many cases, and for example, the purchase of the John Grow site at Diss can have wider social and economic development benefits. So when we calibrate the value of some of these assets, they're not just in terms of pure, bold financial return. We will be able to take into account some of the social benefit, and I think that's probably the biggest difference. Did you want to put some flesh on that particular bone, Debbie?
Yes, absolutely, Chair. Yes, there's certainly a very different emphasis, I think, on this strategy that's before you than the one in 2017. And, that's very specifically in the commercial property asset management strategy. So there's two documents here. There's the framework, which I'll talk about in a moment, but also a separate commercial strategy there around the commercial property. And certainly now there's been a drive from government, obviously, to make sure that when local authorities invest in commercial property, particularly if you want to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board, that actually that income generation is a secondary purpose, and the main purpose has to be economic development thrust really has to be the primary purpose, with obviously secondary then any income generation from those properties. So going back to the framework, as Councillor Elliott mentioned, there's sort of three elements. The update, the strategy here that's been updated very much from the latest guidance from both RICS and SITFA. So the first element is the asset management policy, and there's 6 principles which really are laid out there on page 249, which set out really the guidance and the outline from which we want to manage, or suggest we manage, our land and properties. And you'll see in one of those there it talks about using our land and buildings to grow a sense of place, stimulate economic development and tourism, but also and to support the well-being, social well-being and the needs of the community. So it's very much around how we manage our assets with one of those principles there. So there's 6 outlined there, and then going forward in the policy we put a bit more meat on the bones around the policy objectives and the actions and behaviours under each of those. Moving on to the second element, which is the actual strategy from page 252, talks about how we are going to manage the assets, and mentions on page on 253 you can see the breakdown of that £48 million worth of assets that the council own, and that includes also what we would class as our commercial assets there too. What it doesn't include is the property owned by Big Sky itself. That is contained within the commercial property asset management separately. It mentions it in there that they own over 7 million in terms of the houses that they own for market rents. Moving on then, there is an action plan on page 260 that's been drawn together from the detail that's already in our delivery plan and the capital programme that was approved by council last month. That is very much a dynamic action plan, and that will change as in future property schemes come on and come off of that sort of capital programme and the future delivery plans there. And then finally, moving on to the commercial property asset management strategy that's itself, that is a separate document, and that talks, as I say in there, about the additional 7.4 million housing portfolio owned by Big Sky Property Management Limited. So although the commercial buildings the council owns itself are very much more around industrial commercial units, we mustn't forget that we have also that investment via our company in housing too. Happy to take any questions.
I was just drawn to page 253. You've sort of half mentioned it, but there's assets held for sale. Substantially, they would be the Wyndham Town Council offices and the property we own in Long Stratton. So I think that we would expect those to fall away. They're certainly both of them on either at or contract stroke completion stage. So that will then tidy up, if you will, that ledger there. Are there any other points there? So it's important we have one of these. I think it's please, yes, Jim, do come in.
Thank you. Just one question really for Debbie, I think. She talked about the new government requirements in terms of investment in property. Is there anything that we have on our books that, if it was to be made today, might be considered as potentially outside those government guidelines?
No, I don't think there is. The things that we've invested in from our commercial around things like the units that we've put on the sites at Pouring Land and Long Stratton that have been built out by Big Sky were very much done with the thought that people can work and live in the same sort of locality. So that was very much there. The investment in LMA Barnes was very much done around economic development. And then the other investments in sort of spread around our towns really, in terms of units, and that was very much done because we want to support local businesses. We want to be seen as a good landlord, and a lot of those also have been grow on space. So we've got a lot of businesses that have started with us and stuck with us. So no, I don't think there's anything that today wouldn't have been supported, because there's other reasons why we have invested in those properties beyond just a pure commercial return.
And page 280 demonstrates there's a geographical scope. We haven't bought a travel lodge in Cardiff or a hotel in Harlow or whatever it was, you know. Lisa, please come in.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I was just looking at, I think it's on page 264, key achievements. It carries on over a couple of pages from there, which just shows sort of some investment that we have put into the district. But as I said, it's not just about financial return. We've got investment in our leisure centres, the Ketts Park area for people's health and well-being. And I was just going to mention, I attended the opening event for the LMA Barnes building, was it last week or the week before, which was, this building is something that we've done in the enterprise zone, which is quite an exciting area that has had a lot of expansion. And we've leased the ground floor and the floor above, and we've got colorifics in the ground floor, which we had a tour. Fantastic, really interesting, innovative business. And then we have Bupa on the second floor. So that's creating jobs and bringing these new innovative businesses to Norwich, rather than probably thinking of maybe automatically going to places like Cambridge. So we're trying to get them to come into our district, and they have, and which I think is great, really good. Thank you.
Yeah, come on, Dan.
Thank you, Chairman. I was also just going to highlight on page 288 on the future delivery of the commercial property forward look. The delivery of the new surgeries in Dis and Heatherset in there is earmarked for 26-27.
Good point. Good. Okay, so I'm just trying to back to the start. So I think we're being recommended on page 242 to adopt the strategic asset management framework. I think we've identified the reasons, the differences, and the commercial property asset management strategy, which includes LMA Barnes, doctor surgeries, and other things like that. And then hidden away then is not just the one in Heatherset. Dis members, I think we've got a view, emerging view that health provision in Dis needs to be hardened. So I think there's some emerging plans there as well, and they could come forward on the next cabinet agenda. So good, perfect. Okay, so that takes us, we're happy with that, good. 293, we're nearly through. District direct funding. Kim, you're going to lead us through this, but I just want to place this in some sort of context. I'm going back probably 8 years now, where we really went out on a limb, uniquely amongst district councils in England. It seemed sensible because we were finding that one of our responsibilities is aids and adaptations and disabled facilities grants. And especially elderly ladies, but not exclusively so, when they're discharged from hospital, possibly having a period in hospital, might have broken a leg or something, or tripped over on slippers, or tripped over a hose pipe in the garden, as my mother-in-law did once. They come home from hospital, and it's only at the point of discharge from hospital that the penny dropped. Oh my goodness, they need a walk-in bath, or something like that. And they've been in hospital for a month. And we took the view, and it really was in parallel, Mike, and I know you were here to talk about this, but it was parallel to our help hub. And I don't know who had the idea, but it was a really important insight. If we know someone's going in, and it's going to take them a month to recover in a very expensive hospital bed, why don't we use that month to prepare for their discharge and get the bath in, or whatever it was, a shower room, grab rails, disabled ramp, doesn't really matter, whilst they're in hospital, rather than waiting to the point of discharge and, oh my goodness, they need to stay in another month. And this was, I mean, it was so common sense, but somebody needed to do it, and we started it. And I know, Kim, what you're going to lead us through now is this has now become mainstream. But let's not lose sight of the fact that we've held this candle, this insight, for probably about 8 years now. And it's only now, and it's needed that sustained push to get it into the mainstream. I think you've got some numbers of how much money it's actually saving the hospital. But Kim, over to you, and then Mike, if you can then come in. But it's important because if we may, also, then I'll give up. District Direct, what a crap name that is. Because it doesn't, now this has gone made, I think we need to have a snappier title. I don't know what that title is, perhaps we can all think about it. But something that is really transforming health outcomes and financial outcomes in the health service and making real life better for people as they leave hospital at a low point in their life. So if we can get a better name for this, I think it'll capture the public imagination. But Kim, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree the name doesn't really do what it says on the tin. I think the general public, if you ask someone on the street or even literally walking past the hospital, they don't know what it is. If you say, have you heard of District Direct? They say, no idea what that is. But if you walk around the hospital and you speak to the people who work in A&E and people who work in adult social care, they know what it is because it's absolutely essential to keeping the NNN running and getting people in and out and also preventing people from going in who don't need to come in. So if somebody presenting with homelessness is in A&E, they don't need to be taken into hospital if they don't have a medical requirement. So our District Direct team can literally sweep down and help that person with what they need, which isn't a nurse or a doctor. So District Direct is a service which is not statutory, but it is an essential part of the healthcare system now. It essentially does what is so-called bed blocking and dealing with that. The funding comes from Norfolk County Council and the Integrated Care Board. I think we've put in a little bit of money at points to make sure that it kept going. The District Direct team works in an agile and flexible way, ensuring they can act quickly, help get a patient discharged from hospital by dealing with non-medical things like getting keys cut and a key safe installed or arranging a deep clean of a cluttered home. Using a relatively small amount of money from the ICB, we handle more than 3,000 referrals per year, which achieves an estimated bed day savings of over £17 million. So we're effectively saving an entire ward worth of beds through this service, which is truly remarkable. But I think Mike's got a bit more on the detail.
Thank you, Liz. And in terms of the detail, I think the important thing with this, I think there's two clear elements here, is we have led the way as a district council in championing this role as the chairman has said. And we're now at that point where we are beginning to mainstream. So that's really important. But it also demonstrates the key role the district council has in the health and social care system. This is, and as you read through the report, this is about practical help. This isn't about the excellent work that's done in terms of fixing the broken leg or whatever that is. When it comes down to hospital and comes out of hospital, the district councils in terms of housing and health are key. We have a social economic responsibility for that, and it works well. And I was in the hospital a couple of weeks ago, and when you talk to those matrons and nurses and doctors who really see the value in being able to discharge someone to a home that is safe and it's got that social support around it, they know that that individual is far less likely to come back. And we can talk about, and it's important, about the 3,000 referrals or £17 million. Absolutely, that's essential. But this is about outcomes for individuals, and that's something that we've really led on. We do it on behalf of the 5 district councils because as a district council we recognised quite early on that the NHS boundaries don't work in the same as local government, so let's work together. And our 5 colleagues on those other district councils all support this agenda, and that works really well, and we flow information to them. And we've got two elements to this report today. One is about agreeing this year because we just want to get it off the ground, get that moving again. And then delegating to the Director of People and Communities, along with Councillor Carsock, just to really work with adult social care, who have given us principle a yes anyway, is to look at let's embed this now, so it's not just an annual thing. Let's just embed it. Let's put some legacy behind it. So what we don't want our staff and we don't want the matrons. This is going to be here this time next year. You know, let's put some longevity into it. And I think there's a real opportunity here to demonstrate the importance of health and housing for longer term in Norfolk. And happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
But if you can get someone out of bed, out of the hospital quicker, out of the ward, and I don't know what it costs. I mean, presumably it's £1,000 a day to have a bed in a hospital. I mean, it could be something directionally, something like that. So to save in South Norfolk 11 bed days a day, oh crikey, that's 50 grand a week to the hospital, and that's just us, and there's the other districts as well. So I think this is a really material difference, and it isn't just about the money. It's actually getting people home in their own home, safe and secure for there. So this is a really good thing. So I suppose on one point we can be disappointed this is now going to be subsumed into the county council and the ICB, and it'll just be part of the mush, so to speak. But on the other hand, let's celebrate the fact that it's our innovation that's led us to this point. And actually, we are members of the ICB, and we shouldn't be proprietorial and sort of exclusive about it. This is part of the grist we put to the mill. The challenge is going to be to remind colleagues in the ICB that this does exist, and this is saving heavy, heavy money and improving, lives and outcomes for everybody. So this is a really good thing. So I suppose this is, I'm really proud. This is some of the best work we've done in the 17 years I've been leader. It's made real material differences to individuals and their families, whilst reducing the burden on social care. I mean, this is what government should be about. I just wish there was a bit more of it. We've done really well there. And well done, Kim, for bringing this report. So the recommendation is for Jamie to enter into a fully funded partnership with the County Council, aka the ICB, for provision of district direct, and we do all the negotiations and everything else. And Kim, you're going to keep an eye over it. Perfect. Oh, Jim, come in.
Well,
why you guys always wait till I just round up? You go. Please, indicate before, please.
Absolutely brilliant service, and of course it must continue for the current year and hopefully well beyond that. But sort of two questions. The paper seems to be presented as if there's almost zero cost to South Norfolk. Have I got that right? And my second question is really just a curiosity question. We are one council, but the implication is this is being provided sort of solely through South Norfolk as a funding vehicle, and all the potential redundancy costs, which we hope will never arise, would fall on South Norfolk rather than all of the beneficiaries in terms of councils, or at least South Norfolk and Broadland.
Thank you. To answer this question, yes, in terms of the cost, yes, it's fully funded by adult social care and the NHS, and we add 10% on for management costs as well. And the reason we do that is because we're providing service on behalf of more than just South Norfolk Council, and so we ensure that our pound is spent within the district. And in terms of the council, this is a product that was two councils, one team. So this has always been a South Norfolk Council product. In the future, as we look at these redundancy costs, and let's hope they never come off, but in the future, we will look to spread that cost and spread that overload. But I think yes, I mean, in terms of if you looked at some of our management overheads and time we spent on this, and just today talking about it, costs money, but actually this was the investment that South Norfolk Council wanted to put in. So no direct cost to us, but that cost will spread over the load in the future.
Mike, I think you've only told half the story there. Let's not forget that you've thought about the revenue costs, and important though they are, but don't forget that we've got in our capital programme, and I can't remember the number now, it'll be in here somewhere, certainly well into 7 figures, our disabled facilities grant, where we make capital improvements, physical improvements for people's homes, and the district direct helps us to prioritise those. Jamie, perhaps you can chip in on this. So this is money which the government grants us as for disabled facilities grants, and we have discretion on how to spend it, but the prioritisation of that is a triple benefit really, the individual, the health service, and making sure that we've got the right focus on the DFG. But yes, Jamie, over to you.
Chair, I don't think there's anything else I can say to that. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The money we spend, which is in excess of £1 million a year on DFGs, this just helps us prioritise those who are most vulnerable, for whom the impact will be greatest. I'd only add as well that I think the report covers that there is mitigation in place for any redundancy costs for next year. Twofold. One, we have a budget shortfall we can carry forward. Secondarily, and most importantly, we'd look to deploy those staff anyway because they're good staff and we can find other roles for them, I'm sure. But with mine and hopefully Councillor Carsock's oversight, a longer term agreement will allow us to try and push those redundancy costs, if they ever came to fruition, back upstream to the funder, which is where they probably should sit.
Exactly, yeah. Perfect, good. And let's remember also that we get to speed this through the system, because through District Direct you don't have to waste time waiting, sometimes months, for an occupational health assessment. You cut straight to the chase and get these done. So this is part of the innovation. Really pleased. And I remember now, and I can see her in my mind's eye. Sadly, she's passed away because it's such a long time ago. It was when David White was Chief Executive of the County Council. So that tells you, a nice little lady in Mill Lane, Seething, who had come home from hospital and waited a year, not able to go to the toilet, for the occupational health person to come round. And that's how it used to be. And that made a really strong impression on me. She was in my ward. I had to go all the way up to the Chief Executive of the County Council to get this sorted. And it was that joining the occupational health with everything else. Now, I'm not going to say this is all my idea. It was all done by others. But that was how it used to be. And now it's slick, saving a fortune. And it's how the state should be wired. I think we've done some really good work here. Well done, everyone. Good. Right, we're done. Right, let's move on now to the last, we've done 300 pages in 90 minutes. So, forward plan. I'm only really interested in the next one, to be honest. In the sense that, for those not aware, the Conservative group, I've announced my intention not to stand again in the May election, and the Conservative group will choose a new group leader next Monday, whose responsibility will be to take forward this agenda from May onwards. So the April one, just going through these, conservation area, car parking review. Lisa, I think that's nearly ready to come. We just need to make sure that is right, because that's the third time that's nearly got here. Then the housing strategy, DIS, dry side leisure, so DIS members and anyone who's interested in leisure at the John Gross site and the integration with the town centre would be interested in that one. What's DAHA, Mike? Oh, he's gone. DAHA, is it something that housing is, you're gone? Domestic abuse,
Sorry, Chair, yeah, domestic abuse. Mike's just left the room, Chair, so.
Well, that's going to be really important. Community asset strategy and the food enterprise LDO. And then that will complete my 17 years as leader. Amazing. It's flown by and I've enjoyed every minute. There we are. Good. Right. So I think with that in mind, I think that